26 years old, I'd gone from having a career which I was starting to excel at, which is the only thing I wanted to do because I'd never really fit into society. I'd fit into this society and its actions, to being without a job, being suicidal, and not really having anywhere to live.
Hi, Tom. Thanks so much for agreeing to be interviewed on the Blue Light Ubers podcast. Really appreciate it. Obviously, we connected on LinkedIn a few months back, and you're doing incredible things. And I'm really excited about what we can tell our audience, and particularly those who are considering transitioning into new careers. And you've done amazing things with military vets. You're a military vet yourself, so I really appreciate your time. Thanks, man.
It's exciting to be here. Thanks for having me, Andy.
No worries, mate. So, is it okay if you could just tell us a little bit more about you and about what you currently do?
Sure. Is there anything you'd like to know in particular?
There's lots of stuff, but in particular, it'd be good to know your current role. It's not really a role as such, but what you're currently doing, and we'll go into with you with me a little bit in a lot more detail sort of further into the interview. But obviously, you come from a military background yourself, and it'd be great to know a bit more about what you did in the military, why you left, and your story, basically, Tom.
Sure. I'm a 32-year-old man from Australia, but I look about 42. I'm a bit of a rascal, and I hate injustice. And I sort of quantify injustice as, any process, person, or system that's targeting someone that can't fend for themselves. So, and I think that's a biological thing. My family comes from York and another place in Ireland. Got sent to the second fleet to Australia quite a long time ago. And before that, they were all in the British military. So when we arrived in Australia as convicts, we quickly became a part of the Australian military sort of service, which it was at the time. I don't even know what it was called. And then, my great grandfather landed at Gallipoli with the 6th Battalion, 1st AIF. Fought through the whole war, did the 12th Light Horse Charge at Beersheba. His son and his nephews were in World War II and World War One. One of his nephews won the VC. On Kokoda Track as an infantry soldier. And then my grandfather's sons were in Vietnam and Korea, and then became police officers, which is quite interesting in Australia's version of the special branch at the time. And then their sons and me, which I'm from my mum, so she didn't serve. We've served in East Timor, Iraq, and Afghanistan. So by the time I was 18, growing up in Campbelltown in southwest Sydney, which is a little bit like the East End of London, I found myself a bit of a dickhead, all right at school, but if I wanted a Christmas present, then I'd had to join the infantry like everyone else in my family over a very long period of time. So and I joined the Australian Army as 18, and then it became a pretty sort of tumultuous journey through service to where I am today.
What exactly happened?
So I've got my family are all like 6'4" to 6'8", and I'm 6'2", so I'm like the run of the litter. And unfortunately, on my dad's side, his family are all teachers, so very low economic class, but we're all teachers, and he had 7 brothers and sisters, and everyone in his family became a teacher except him. He did like 3 weeks university to become a teacher and just left. He got expelled twice from his high school. Same high school. I don't know why they would let him back, but he got expelled twice, left at 18, and ended up running a KFC and a Pizza Hut they were next door to each other at the same time. So he got 2 paychecks as the manager of both of them. So he's a guy that's constantly, I would say, bending the rules in order to get forward. Now, you then ended up selling cigarettes door to door, getting picked up for a large company's graduate program without a degree by one of the CEOs that he sold cigarettes to, and ended up making that organization about $4 billion worth of value in 10 years. So, he's a master at building shopping centers. Well, it's not as valuable anymore, but it was back then. So by the time I was 18, my family had gone from pretty low class to not very low class at all. And my little sister is very different to me and my older sister because of that journey. So why am I telling you all that? My dad's brain my dad has significantly high abstract reasoning. So the ability to connect underlying logic and street smarts is maybe a good way of thinking about it. And he learns by talking about things. And that's a big problem because I've got my mum's sort of, warrior type sort of body, but my dad's brain. And when you go to recruit school as a soldier, the way they teach you is tell me, show me, test me. So we'll show you how to do something, then you got to apply it. That's not how my brain works. I need to know why we're doing it. I need to talk about why we're doing it. I need to understand why we're doing it. So very quickly, I was in a lot of trouble.
Right.
Because I can't not ask questions because I'm too disagreeable. So, I've got my dad's rule breaking, my hate of authority, as well as, I've got to ask questions. And non-commissioned officers, that's not the way they train you at recruit school. You have to, you lose all your privileges and you have to earn them back. And one of those privileges is the ability to ask questions. So the first sort of 8 weeks of 11 weeks of training were fucking torture because it's just how my brain works. And then, I couldn't, the Australian rifle is a bullpup design that's not adjustable. So a lot of the marksmanship principles don't work because your body's too big for the rifle and you can't adjust the stock. So, I sucked at shooting and I had bad eyesight. No, I don't. I got laser eye when I was a combat soldier. So I had bad. And then by the time we went outfield, so out bush and into the soldiering environment, I thought I couldn't do the job. But it turns out that I have a lot of grit. It turns out that I can navigate things. It turns out that I can see things in a distance in really intense scrub. So all of a sudden, all these soldier skills that allowed me to survive in the actual real environment that you would be deployed in were valuable. So then my time there changed and I realized I could be a pretty good soldier. So that was pretty shit. And then I became a soldier for a while, and I just realized that there were a lot of bad people in charge. Not just in terms of negligence, just more. I don't think they wanted to win as much, and so I thought I could be a better officer. So I did my business degree at night, and then applied internally to become an officer in the Australian Army, which is, we call it retread, but in the US Army, it's a Mustang, and went to the Officer Selection Board in Canberra. And I still hold the record for being kicked out as many times. I think 6 times I got kicked out in the 2-hour session. So it's like getting kicked out of Shark Tank 6 times. That's what it was. And so that was pretty bad. Looking back, I was arrogant, ego, wasn't humbled by the opportunities that were given to me, wasn't really a good soldier, so they were sort of right to have a go at me. But on the other hand, I probably would have stayed a soldier, knowing what I know now. Because being an officer, it's great when you're the combat commander on the ground, but the rest of it's sort of pretty boring. So I did that, became an infantry officer, got told I'd failed Duntroon, came second there. Got told to be a crappy infantry officer, came first at my School of Infantry Officers course, and then deployed at 22 with a 60-man combat team in Afghanistan. did a whole bunch of interesting stuff. It's the best job I've ever had. I was absolutely blown away by the intelligence, aptitude, and ability of some of the 18, 19-year-olds or people that were older that were doing extraordinary things with little amounts of resources. We got, we're a combat unit, and we all ended up, training and mentoring people, which isn't really what we do. Especially police, which was a bit odd, and learn a lot about doing complex work with small resources, a lot of oversight, but flexibility and initiative on the ground. And I realized at that point that that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to be that person that's out in the middle of nowhere, taking down a bad, unjust something, and doing it with few amount of resources. And there are jobs that do that in the Australian Army, so I started to train for them and get ready for that type of selection. And then, unfortunately, I got injured on a recon course. Didn't really want to be a part of it. Quit the course, which is the only time I've ever quit anything in my life. And then my whole life unraveled, which was pretty bad. And looking back at it, I didn't really agree. I didn't really want to be in recon or reconnaissance. I didn't really believe in how the army was doing it, which is still rolling around in bushes. Like, if you're 6'4", it's not, what the hell? You can buy a $1,200 drone that has thermal out to 3Ks. So it sort of messed with my brain a little bit, but I didn't take the opportunity as a humbled opportunity. And by quitting, I came back, and about a week into coming back, my sort of body fell apart and I kept falling over when I walked. And then they looked into my legs, and it turns out I had severe osteoarthritis at 25, 26. And, they said that my knees were the same as an 85-year-old man, and that I wouldn't be able to walk within a year. So,
wow.
I reckon I did that to myself. I reckon that was karma in some ways. But at that point, I paid for $50,000 worth of stem cell myself, walked effectively again, ran effectively again with rehab for 12 months, but couldn't pass the next combat assessment with weight to deploy. So the Army medically discharged me, and at 26 years old, I'd gone from having a career which I was starting to excel at, which is the only thing I wanted to do because I'd never really fit into society. I'd fit into this society and its actions, to being without a job, being suicidal, and not really having anywhere to live.
So how did you cope with that transition, Tom? And then how did you actually go about, did you hit rock bottom, and then was there any particular catalyst or any particular event, or was anything that turned things around for you? Because obviously where you've been and where you are now are poles apart. So what happened?
I wouldn't say I'm far from where I was then. I don't think I've finished my transition. And the reason is I still have to tell my story all the time to help people with their own. So I've never had time to, put it to bed, which is a bit tough, which you'll find out a bit later. But, it probably wasn't till about 9 months into rehab where I was standing on the ruck line, because I passed all the other fitness assessments. I was super fit. Like, I was probably the fittest I've ever been. And my legs just gave away. And I was just like, fuck. So after that, I think I got, there's 9 pubs in Wagga Wagga, Australia, which is a nice name. It's about 7 hours maybe west of Sydney towards the desert. It's where our recruit school is. And I think I got banned from 6 of them for fighting. So that's not something a commissioned officer should be doing on the weekend, or anyone really should be doing. But at that age, after that, attempted suicide about 3 times over the course of sort of 60 days. And the same guy stopped me every time, which is interesting. Still one of my good friends today. So, why did I hit rock bottom? For the first time in my life, I couldn't outwork the problem. So the same way they told me at Duntroon I'd fail, I can outwork them, right? Like I'm going to prove you wrong. No matter what I could do, I can't solve this problem. Doesn't matter how much grit, resilience, how much more PT that you do, or your legs are just not, you can't do it anymore. The one thing you're good at, you can't do. And that really messes with you. It makes you look at two things, this person that's like a complex brand, all of a sudden you don't have, that packaging. So you sort of huff down to what you really are. And what you really are isn't that good. And you then realize that most of these things that have led you to this moment, it's your fault. So, I ignored doctors and got stem cell. I pushed people away from me when I was in rehab because I was razor focused. I just didn't believe I didn't believe what I was hearing. I wanted to beat it. I put a target on my back because I was outspoken on things that I didn't understand in the context of why I was doing them. But now I do. There's probably people that try to help me along the way, but I was sort of significantly disagreeable. And, there could have been things that done better, but when you really look at it and you're sitting there and you got nothing left, you realize that you probably done most of it. And then you start to ask yourself, like one of the things I did as well is you start listening to yourself talk when you've lost everything and you're alone. And one of the things that you realize really quickly is a lot of the things you're saying aren't true. 2, you don't really believe them. And 3, you should just stop saying them. So, I guess this sort of person that wanted to be this big bad warrior has gone and crippled into this husk, and most of the shit they're saying is shit. Mm-hmm. So, got nothing to talk about and you're nothing. And then you confront the real monster, and that real monster is you. And that's the person that's, pushed away people that were trying to help you. Not take the opportunities that you were humbly given at a young age, and have the perspective of there's something bigger at play. And that was pretty tough. And one of the things I learned, I guess, about self-harm and suicide is you don't want to do it. And that was, it's just, there's no other option. And one of the things I found really interesting was this sort of compounding pressure of, people in my family tell me I'm going to be all right, and that they won't be all right if I'm not around. When I'm just like, hey, I don't see any logical path here. So, I sort of found that pretty annoying, to be frank, because, it's like, how dare you guilt me into existing when I don't want to. Logically, I don't have a place. The one place I was functional in society, economically, that was good for me, I can't do. So, if I go biologically, well, if society can't set me into another job or anything else, and I also can't have kids, what's my value? And there, in a lot of ways, there isn't any. So it was very difficult. I spent about 3 days at home. My parents had been home about 8 years. I realized I couldn't live there because I'd changed so much over that period of time. And what you find is your parents sort of become your peers, and if they don't, your life doesn't advance. And I'd definitely gone past that point because of all the stuff I'd done at such a young age, and so I didn't have anywhere really to go. Right, so I just found myself for the first 90 days out of uniform drinking. Yeah.
So from that period there, then, Tom, was there something that made you think, I need to snap out of this? I need to, because you moved into that sort of more towards you recognize that tech and digital skills were the way to go. And I'm trying to connect the dots between that low point and how you decided to move into, and you suddenly sort of make that transition, because
I was probably about 90 days in the, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. No, go for it. Sorry.
I was probably like 90 days into drinking until I realized I'm just fucking bored. Like it wasn't like it wasn't like I'm highly extroverted, so it wasn't like like I need to be around people. So and all my friends are all serving, right? Because none of them are going to get out for a while because they didn't get injured, so they've got still a contract in service. And so who am I hang out with? I hang out with the dudes that I grew up with. Some of them are great. A lot of them got into a lot of trouble because that's where I was heading. So that's not a good place to be. So I'm gonna live in Sydney and I'm gonna drink, and then I was like, no, that's enough. Probably need a fucking job, eh? So because I'm bored and I need to be around people. So I applied for like 200 jobs. And I got 15 interviews. And one of my interviews told me that I couldn't be a security guard at a bank because I had no financial services security experience. And I was sitting there after running close personal protection teams and stuff that you would know, and going, what's different about your building in finance? So I sort of asked, I wrote, it's like I was talking to this 24-year-old, and she's like, you haven't really done much in your life. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I haven't. You haven't really traveled the world. And it was just a really interesting process. But, fundamentally what was interesting, I'm like, well, I started doing interviews. I started asking, well, do you want to actually hire veterans? I guess, because everyone thinks of veterans as this, 85-year-old man on Anzac Day or Remembrance Day. But, now there's a lot of them, and they look like me, and they're very different. We have a digital military and all these other things. So, and the enemy was, although rudimentary, the information warfare wasn't. So it's pretty interesting how complex and how much the people that are, I would say, commanders at a junior level now would be to 20 years ago. Okay, so they're a different brain and they're a different person. And I would ask, do you want to hire veterans? Like, oh, of course you want to hire veterans. And I'm like, well, why do you want to hire them? And they go, well, they're on time and they're disciplined. I'm like, okay, so if you've got an accountant next to another accountant, do you hire one accountant because they generate a better return, or do you hire one accountant because they're more boring? And the answer to what you're saying to me about veterans being on time is similar to saying I've hired this accountant because they were the most boring one. Mm-hmm. So it all just became a little bit silly. And what I realized through the process of all these jobs is working out the way talent and its potential is assessed in a labor market, no matter, it's just if you're new, whether you're a veteran leaving school or coming back from maternity leave, leaving the police force, it doesn't really matter. If you're entering the labor market for the first time, the economic one, their ability to assess what you can do is rudimentary. And the ability they use to assess people that actually know, like that have the skills or that have the experience in their eyes, is an applicant tracking system where they have 10,000 applicants and read 2%. So they're not even using the systems that they've bought, which just ends up people being overeducated in order to get a job, which doesn't really work, or people they know. So you've got the natural sort of income inequality generating in socio groups. So we worked out the data model was crap, subjective and speculative, not objective, based off what someone could do in the future. That really bothered me. And that's all built by Leonardo da Vinci's resume or CV from 1492. So that's how old it is. And then the second thing we found, especially when it came to digital skills, as I started to go for more IT roles, because there was just more of them, right, was that the training for digital skills was either product based or theoretical. So there's no apprenticeship, there's no trade. So what the universities were spinning out and what the companies wanted were two different things. So there's this, even if you got that degree and you spend a master's in computer science after being a police officer or a soldier, it doesn't mean you'll get a job because it's theoretical and they need someone that can build things. So we noticed that, and I ended up getting a job for like £22,000 a year. So about a 50 to 60% pay cut, doing telemarketing for Hewlett Packard, 60 cold calls a day selling servers. And he's like, if you sold a server, you made $50. So
wow.
It would take you do 60 cold calls a day. You get actually 12 people on the phone. 12 would go to 9 that they let you present to. 9 would go to a follow-up of 3, and you might close 1. So it's a lot of work. It's like $50 extra a day. Telemarketing, really. And, you find your soul doing that shit. And I would say, my last job was managing about 100 people. So it was pretty interesting. They didn't really even want to give me a job because I don't have any experience in what they were talking about. But they gave me a chance, and that CEO was pretty brilliant, actually. I still talk to him every now and then today. He's a very good entrepreneur. And what ended up happening was I just stopped turning up to work because it wasn't working. And I got a HP jacket and just went around and started seeing customers face-to-face selling servers. And I sold $20 million worth of servers in 90 days. And they expect you to do maybe 50,000 a year worth of servers. Wow. And then they asked me if I wanted to have 4 or 5 times as much money and to do a better job. And I just said, well, I've broken all your rules. I haven't turned up to work and you reward me. And that's when I realized that it was a significantly dysfunctional talent mobility process as well. It's like, you spent the last 90 days yelling at me for not being at work. Because like you haven't made this easy for me to even give you this money. So, it was at that point one of my soldiers was heavily depressed and attempted suicide. And I realized that if I'm having this much issue getting into the workforce, and then when I'm getting into the workforce having this much issue showing my value, what's happening to my soldiers that might not have had as much management exposure or a degree, or even know someone, or even if they're not even extroverted. Good luck. I did all those interviews. I started cold calling people to get a job because I haven't talked to anyone. What if you're not that way inclined? So, that's when we stopped and we started. I quit, sold everything I had, moved in on the couch with someone, and put about $500,000 into WithYouWithMe, and that was 7 years ago.
So tell us a bit more about WithYouWithMe then, Tom, because it's the growth is extraordinary, and it's been recognised, globally as an incredible startup, and obviously things are just going from strength to strength, and it's really disruptive. Love it. And you recently talked about the CVs and no longer be relevant and all this sort of stuff. So it'd be really interesting to know a bit more about the growth of WithYouWithMe, what it is that the offer is in terms of how you're helping vets, and also then we could talk about a bit, because you've got a real thing around, understandably so, but I'd be really interested to know a bit more about the neurodivergent side as well, and why you're keen to explore that for people who are looking to move into tech as well.
No problem.
A lot of questions there, mate. Sorry about that. That was about 7 questions in one there. But yes, tell us a bit more about WithYouWithMe and how that has grown.
Yeah, so we started WithYouWithMe to help riflemen get jobs. So if you look at the average rifle sort of soldier, so think of the door kicker, the frontline troop they're furthest away from transferable skills, and we thought if we could get them jobs, we can get anyone a job. And so we started with that. So our company wanted to solve veteran unemployment, and a lot of those people were unemployed. And then within a year, it became about solving underemployment. And what that now means is we want a world where people are hired based off potential, aptitude and skills over experience. And that doesn't matter if you're getting hired, getting moved from A to B in a company. It's all based off that objective model. And that objective model allows you to be assessed as an asset versus a human resource. And we started helping veterans. We now help those that are neurodiverse, those that are military spouses or women returning from paternity leave, those that are youth under 25 that are struggling to find employment, refugees and migrants coming to a new country, and emergency services personnel, because all of them either come from a different society, emergency services personnel, military, which is esoteric, or their industry has changed and they have to shift, but all of them do have to shift what their previous role was. And career transition and career shifting or entry is actually really fatal. You can really mess it up. So that's why the company is called WithYouWithMe, because we're with you as you go through your transition through that fatal funnel, like you do when you do a door entry. What we started to do really simply was buy off-the-shelf training, give it for free to a soldier, place them in a job and get a recruitment fee. And now what we do is we have a whole software as a service that tests your aptitude in 90 minutes in 10-minute intervals on your phone, tells you out of 168 occupations what jobs you can do by a percentage number. You don't need any transferable skills. You just need year 9 math and English, so it's very accessible. And then we'll train you for free for 144 hours and then match you into that employer to start work. And how we can do it for free is that the software that we've built to help you train is getting purchased by companies to upskill their workforces, which a large amount of them are trying to do. Use our software to attract new talent like you or access you for that job. So we've been able to shift the economies of scale to the employer, because we have something called proactive matching. So rather than having a job ad where they wait and they pay $800 a job ad, we'll actually match you the candidates based off search terms that are available right now, which significantly saves a lot of money in recruiting time and gives you access to a pool of people you never would have considered. So, we've been able to build a pretty good business out of it. And the way that the business works is every time we sell a license, it's a 10-to-1 ratio, which means that if I sell you a software license for £10,000, I train 10 people for free forever. So we're a social impact company or a profit and purpose company, which means that everything we sell allows us to increase our talent pool. Last year we could train 5,000 people for free. This year we can train 40,000 people for free. So the upside is that we can get more people and get it in. Now the business has gone from about 50 to 500 staff roughly in the last 18 months. About 200 staff in North America, about 35 staff in the UK, growing to about 100 over the next 6 to 9 months, and the remainder in Australia. So we've not just been able to take this business from Australia, we've been able to move it around the world, because there's the same issue everywhere, and that issue is the resume, and we want to get rid of it. And the second thing is in 2019 we won the Deloitte Fast 500, so the fastest growing tech company in Asia Pacific, and it's the first time in 15 years an Australian company has won it and beat a Chinese company. And what's really important about that is 85% of our workforce at that time were combat veterans in their first job from the military. So no business background, no technology background, and we'll be able to beat all the other tech companies, which should really show you the value of people that are leaving different services and what potential can bring. And now we have 75% of our staff combat veterans, and the rest split across everything from national police forces, military spouses, and those that are neurodivergent. So the majority of our workforce will always be people that graduate our programs.
I mean, that's incredible. And the growth and, 50 to 500 in 18 months as well. And I mean, it's staggering. It really is. You're doing incredible things. Why neurodivergence? What is it that drives that for you? What is it about neurodivergence?
It's a bit of a side. I had a young entrepreneur with autism frustratingly walk into my office about 3 years ago that had sold his software company, and he's British actually, and he'd gone around the whole circuit in Australia with National Disability Insurance Scheme and just realized no one was actually helping anyone get a job, or was there any program that allowed people to, and he was really struggling. So I sort of immediately sort of said, well, why don't we train 1,000 people for free and see what happens? So it was a chance meeting from someone that cared about it. And, we have free training spots, so why not? The other thing in my family is that, I would say there's a high amount of neurodivergent people in my family on my father's side across dyslexia and autism. So I've seen my dad lift his family, not out of poverty, but out of a lower class to a higher class personally, and coach a lot of his brothers and sisters and their kids into work. And I'll say quite a bit of them are high functioning geniuses. So I've had a real intimate reaction. And my last sort of thing is when I was a kid, we do a basic skills test, and it's an aptitude test that you do when you're 8, and you do it again, or you're 8 or 9, and then you do it again when you're 10 or 11. And I got in the bottom 0.5% of the state and got told I was, I think, mentally restricted or something like that, effectively. Anyway, I had this teacher called Mrs. Barbara Bowyer, and she made me stay after school for like 2 years straight and say everything 3 times and write down everything 3 times. And what I didn't know at the time was I did that test again. You do the test twice, and I got in the top 0.5%, like a top 1% of the state. So complete flip. And I guess what she worked out is that I was probably dyslexic, and I couldn't remember anything. So what she gave me was a way of increasing my recognition memory by like memorizing the structure of the word versus what the word actually meant and comprehended it, and then just repetition. So, there's sort of 2 things came out of that for me. One, how many times has Barbara Bowyer done this without asking? Like, I'm not the first kid, which for me is like, well, there are people out there that go above and beyond in all service and civil service or careers that never ask for anything. And 2, well, I probably should do something like that. And what I found hiring people that are neurodivergent, predominantly with ADHD, autism, or dyslexia, is that there is a real misunderstanding of what they're capable of and how they like to work, and a real focus on making people safe. And that, I think, is the wrong conversation. For example, if someone's autistic, a lot of people think that everyone that's autistic is a Rain Man or woman. And some of our best salespeople are autistic, and it's because they have high verbal reasoning. So they're actually extremely good at articulation. And when you think about Rain Man, you think about someone that's not. They want to be in a room with numbers. So the aptitude test has really opened up the cognitive diversity across the spectrum of neurodiversity, and it sort of has made some really interesting things. Like, our best product managers have ADHD, and people would think that that's wrong, but a product manager in a high growth company, there's actually a lot to be across, and you're like a mini CEO, so you actually have to jump from problem to problem. And although that looks like someone's unfocused, their job is to be a little bit unfocused, because they've got to solve a chaotic problem, not a very linear workflow. So, that type of data really can change perspectives. And we now have, I think, 1/4 of our workforce out of 500 self-identify as neurodivergent.
Incredible. Love that. And
without changing any management policies or anything, by the way, without all those other things they tell you to do. And staff satisfaction's at like 89% or something. So 89% of my staff at any time would refer someone else to work here.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Did we really need to do anything, or do we just need to be open-minded and look at someone's potential and, allow people to work remotely? Like, that's the other thing that we've done. Other than that, nothing really at all.
Incredible. So where do you see the opportunities at the moment, Tom, in terms of tech and the digital workplace, and why do you think that vets and cops are a good fit for what you're looking for, particularly within that tech and digital workplace?
Well, I think that veterans are really good for growth and startup organizations because they're fundamentally idealists in a lot of ways. They join for adventure or some form of legacy. And what we've noticed in this, like not all military members, you probably know this, become good police officers. Some do.
Yeah, some are amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot don't. A lot become better paramedics.
Yeah.
And that's not a sway at anyone. It's just that you'll find that there's a lot more disagreeable people in the military than there is agreeable people, than say the police force. So there is a lot of roles for veterans at startup and growth organizations, and there's a lot of roles in terms of temperament for police members in technology, and I would say mature in organizations that need to be turned around. So they're like, and that's just based off their temperament. And what we've found is that veterans are quite good at solutions if they haven't been built for the first time, and those that come from an emergency services background are actually quite good at fixing something that's really broken and redesigning it, and making it more efficient, or improving efficiency and effectiveness of the technology. So that's just a general insight, but I think there is a lot of opportunity for people leaving the military and emergency services and the civil service in low-code app development, cloud engineering, data analytics, business analysis, and also like tech sales, if you want to talk to people. So they're applicable, but the type of organization you should join will probably change, because one loves to turn things around and deal with chaos. One wants to create chaos. And I'd say the Army is great at creating chaos for the enemy, for example. And generally the police force is very good at walking in, managing the incident and turning it around. And that's generally what gets attracted to each, actually. Yeah. There's no way I could be a police officer. I don't know how my uncles were police officers. I think that just because of how different the special branch was at the time, that they made good detectives, but they're very disagreeable men with very open to experience. So there's no way I think there could be a good cop these days.
I did 30 and I still look back and think I'm not sure how I got through it, but you do. In terms of the courses as well, Tom, you said about the actual programs that are available as well, and what potential the software as a service takes you through, and the direction it moves you. So what are the courses that people do, and are they sort of globally recognized?
That's a great question. So we have 42 courses. We'll add 36 this year. Those courses are roughly 140 hours long. You can do them self-paced or blended, so you can attend a boot camp. For all of those people I've just mentioned, they're free. So there's no cost. If you want to switch courses, you can. There's no tie-in fee. You never have to pay us back. If you do our course and get a job elsewhere, go for it. Just tell someone about our platform so we can get more people through it. And you can go from no technology skills through our platform. So you don't need to have anything before you start. Out of those courses, they're certified at a grad cert and a diploma level in the US and Australia. And over the next 18 months, we'll get a certification here. One of the certifications we already have here is for our cybersecurity defender course, and it's certified by GCHQ. So a great career for those leaving policing is cybersecurity, especially in incident management, operations, vulnerability management, and governance. So if you are looking to do it and you've got that secret clearance, it's right up the alley for that type of person. And that's accredited locally, which is quite exciting.
Yeah, brilliant.
And we've got then 9 sort of vendor certifications. So you can do a Microsoft certification, you can do a Salesforce. So any of those brands that you do, we generally do them after our training course. You can also get them here for free.
Incredible. That is absolutely amazing. What if people are a bit sort of intimidated by that? And you must get this with vets as well, in terms of, I couldn't possibly do that. I'm not, I haven't got a degree, or I'm not clever enough. And obviously we've sort of covered a bit of this, but, what would you say to people who may feel that they might not have the necessary skill set, or people get very institutionalized, both in the military and obviously within policing and emergency services. That's all they've ever known. I joined at 18, left at 48, that's all I'd ever known, really. So, and for someone to come along and say, look, we'll give you these courses for free. It sounds a bit too good to be true. Yep. So how do we deal with that? And secondly, if we're feeling a bit intimidated around, I'm not sure I'm the right sort of, is this the right thing to do? Because I'm not sure I've got the right skill set. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. So, if we were a scam, I wouldn't have a $600 car. So, I sort of wish we were a scam. I have a much nicer car, but we're not that. The first thing I would say is that if I could do it, you're going to be able to do it better. I have extremely average aptitude. I'm really not that been good at, I haven't been good at that many things my whole existence. And I was also significantly depressed, and I've been able to build a technology business globally. Okay. So, how do I do it? Well, I did it off YouTube and ThoughtWorks. That's about it. So, and sometimes Stack Overflow. And it's honestly the great thing about becoming a technologist is there's a real fail forward culture. You solve one problem, you got to solve then another 10 that you've created by solving it. So it sort of leans into your ability to deal with uncertainty, going from task or mission to mission, and that should relate quite well to you. But it also means that you can. The learning isn't linear, so it's more about do you like to solve problems and do you like to do it continuously? And the answer is yes. You should get on our platform and do our aptitude test. Now, 82% of people that do that test will match with a high match, so above 75%. Those that don't be too worried. We have non-technical matches that we have from project management to program management. There's probably about 60 other jobs you can do that are tech-enabled roles, like sales. So you can look at those. But also, we don't restrict you from doing the training because aptitude is one component. You could have a lot of grit. So my aptitude to run a tech company is probably low, but my character or my resilience and my reason for doing it is out of the ballpark. So, I'm going to do it. So, we don't restrict you from training. So I would say get on there and do your test, then try a course and give it a go. Now, if you don't want to listen to us, we have an online community of roughly 5,000 alumni that you can speak to on Discord. It can be a little bit overwhelming, but all the people that have come through, gotten jobs, you can chat to them. And they'll answer the questions that you've got, and you'll probably find that there might be someone like you. And the last thing I would say is, what else are you going to do? If you're not getting into technology, your chances of increasing your wealth outside of a really good crypto investment, which you might get lucky on, is going to be quite low. Property is extremely hard to buy. The only way you can get property is to have quite a large income. Fastest way to an income is a larger income that grows exponentially is a technology job. So, whether you like it or not, we're probably all going to be technicians, analysts, or developers in the next 4 or 5 years. So why don't you get ahead of the curve, give it a go. It won't break. If it does break, that's what the community likes. And just know that there are a whole bunch of people that have been through it that are more than happy to answer your questions.
Incredible. Thank you, mate. That's a perfect answer. Exactly right. That's I love that. Thank you. One of the other things I picked up as well was that you are, we have touched on this, but you're really radically changing the whole sort of recruitment process, the death of CVs and this sort of stuff as well, which I think is fantastic. And I'd be really interested to see how that's going, but also that process around matching people with the team culture rather than the organizational culture as well. And are you able to expand on that just a little bit more?
So we started, I've been running WithYouWithMe for 7 years. I don't really like business too much, by the way. It's fascinating. So I appreciate entrepreneurs, but I don't like business. It's just sort of necessary. One of the things I realized early in our company is that a lot of people, some people could handle me and some people couldn't. That's been my whole life, which is why sometimes I describe myself as an acquired taste. And that's fine. I'm not really gloomy over it, but it was getting in the way of productivity. And when you're a startup, you have to almost get double out of your resources in order to beat take money off the bigger companies. So, and scrappy companies need to do some interesting stuff. So what we first started to do was when you joined our company, you used to pick a Pokemon. And what was weird is people started picking Pokemon that they looked like. And their traits were pretty similar. So we started to use personality testing that we built off the big five to help people pick, 3 types of, Pokemon: a creative Pokemon that was red, a translator Pokemon that was blue, and then a grass Pokemon that was a doer. And then all of a sudden everyone had a Pokemon, and it got really weird. And we just stopped doing the Pokemon bit. We kept doing the testing, and we started to work out that, we took everyone to a pub one day, and there was like 40 staff in this pub, and the creative people were arguing with each other. The translator people were trying to negotiate to get them to stop arguing. And everyone that was the doer type person that was highly conscientious and agreeable left early to go back to finish their work.
Right.
So what we started to work out is that WithYouWithMe is a group of teams solving a group of problems, and those problems are at different stages. And, some people are more suited based off that archetype to a certain stage. So in a startup stage, it's very uncertain, it's very murky, but it's exciting. It's a trailblaze. And, you need a combination of those three types of people in that team. You might have more creative people, but you still need a combination. So what we started to do was take this archetype concept and match people to being a startup team, growth team, a mature team, or turnaround team based off what that culture needed. And we started to call it culture add. So what can you add to this culture? So it's the right person at the right time, which means sometimes you might need to add a creative person to a mature team and do it consciously and tell them to unleash and help to disrupt them. So what that did was took the simple thing of, I don't know who to talk to at the organization because I'm one of the creative people, and the creative people know that they can escalate to the CEO, and they're very hard to retain. And they're also very hard to maintain productivity, because if you've got a truly creative person, not like a highly intelligent non-creative, which sometimes can appear creative, you can't tell them to really do anything. You can't tell them to be creative. You sort of have to give them a problem. And then, if even when I still have to think about something that's truly abstract, I've got to go have 11 pints because I just have to. And then I've got to have 11 pints, but not thinking about it. And then the next day I'll wake up and I'll just be furiously typing for 4 hours. I can't tell you why. That doesn't mean I walk around continuously drunk. You don't need to be creative all the time as a CEO. But the sort of point out of it was that we stumbled upon how to match someone on what they could add based off their traits, not their flaws. So nearly every personality test tells you what your flaws are. What we tell you are, these are your strengths. You should add to this team right now, not these are your strengths overall. No, you could add to this team right now. They need someone that's open to experience. They need someone that's disagreeable. And that's very unusual. And that's driven up productivity. And that tool is based off that methodology is being used in, I think about 68 organizations to match people to teams, which is increasing retention and tenure. We actually think that the world will go to team descriptions and applying for a team, not applying for a job in the near future.
Oh, that's incredible. And yeah, I was fascinated by it when I was doing some reading and research prior to this. And I thought it was absolutely fascinating. Without it sounds like we're name dropping now, but can you just give people a bit of an idea of the type of companies that you're working with currently? And obviously I know you're over here in the UK developing more and more as well and building those relationships. But I think it'd be interesting for people to know who you're working with currently.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how long. Should be wrapping up soon, I think.
I guess we work with like Ernst Young. We have sort of three sort of subsets of customers. We work with nearly every Ministry of Defence in Five Eyes, except the Kiwis, use our software, which is a really big customer for us. They're not using it to transition; they're using it to their own capability, which is really exciting. Most of the large system integrators like IBM, Accenture, Infosys, we work with. We have then another set of customers, which is financial services. So think your large banks globally that we work with. Hopefully we're about to start working with Lloyd's here on a number of things. We work with non-defense government departments like DWP and those type of customers. Globally, we've about 69 federal government departments are on our software within Five Eyes. And we also work with tech companies. And the tech companies we work with are the ones that are probably about past 100 million in revenue, and really are streaming video game companies, because they're much more open-minded on not having just traditional computer science engineers. Places like Confluent and I think Adobe. There's a number of big tech names that we work with, Microsoft, that are also are taking talent or using our software.
Right, incredible. Tom, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I know it's it was always going to be tight getting time with you. I really, I can't thank you enough. And obviously we started speaking a couple of months ago through LinkedIn, and that was as a result of the offer of allowing people to do the test and take the test, and the offer of the free courses, which is incredible. So I can't thank you enough for that, man. It's incredibly kind.
No, like we're very excited to help. I watched my uncle struggle with employment until they were entrepreneurial at a young age. So anything I can do to help people that are in emergency services, the police force, try a career in tech, we definitely will. And one thing I will say is thanks for having me on, because whether you know it or not, one of the biggest things that's valuable is the community. Podcasts like this drive an external community. If you do get yourself a job, always come back and contribute, because I tell you what, I had a terrible transition experience, and it's guys like you, Andy, that allow people like me to connect the dots and hopefully talk to someone else before they do something silly like I did. Thank you, mate.
That's really kind of you, and I really appreciate your time. What we'll do as well, we'll link to in the show notes and the when I talk about the podcast afterwards, the outro, we'll link where people can go to get further information. And but if people connect, can they connect with you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, add me on LinkedIn. I talk to everyone. I still talk to 20 new users a week on the phone. So if you want to have a chat, I could probably help you, tell you what not to do in a business. Or I know a little bit about product management. Other than that, I'm more than happy to chat to your team. And my team, as I've got about 4 staff exclusively in the UK that are on the platform, that are there to answer your questions, and you can book a call with them anytime. So you can just sign up, website www.WithYouWithMe.com, fill out your profile, and just click book a call, and you can speak to anyone that you like.
Incredible. Thanks for your time, Tom. Really appreciate it, mate.
Easy. Awesome.
Great talking to you.
Thank you.
A huge thanks to Tom for his time. I'm sure you agree, it's an incredible interview, and what an opportunity. That free training and free psychometric testing. And you can find out more by going to www.bluedotleavers.com/WithYouWithMe, and you can register through the link there. Now, finally, episode 50, massive thanks to Sam from Right Royal Audio. He has to deal with all of my mistakes and try and make this make sense. And I really appreciate the time and effort that you put in. But most importantly, it's you, the listener. As I said, we're 50 episodes in, we've had thousands of downloads across over 60 countries. And there's been incredible feedback. And it's an absolute honor to be able to speak with so many incredible people and share their stories, and an opportunity for me to offer support and guidance to those that really need it. I mean it from the heart. Thank you so much for listening. And here's to the next 50. Take care. Speak to you again soon. Bye for now.